Okay, I'm going to remove these two solenoids. It looks like they're 10mm bolts holding them in, so one right there and one right there. So I'll take off those bolts and I'll take out those two solenoids. Okay, so the bolts are out and I marked it with brown and black so I know which is which. I'm going to take a flathead and put it under here, and instead of leveraging it out, we're going to leverage it out by twisting it. Looks like it's got 3 O-rings too. Same way with this, I'll try to twist it off. And the reason why I did brown and black is because that connector is actually brown and that's black. And they actually look just like, basically look just like these. So I'm gonna also label those so that I don't get those mixed up. And I'll put them in separate places too. Okay, so I put a 2x4 here to try to hold the transmission case still, and I put another piece back here doing the same thing, and they're all pushing against the baseboard. It will still rock, so what I'm gonna do next, and probably the smarter way, is I'm gonna put it on its bottom, and then so I'll try to torque it down into the ground, and I'll put a 4-foot pipe at the end of this. So I'll set that up and then I'll show you. Okay, it's not working this way either, because when I push down on this, the whole transmission moves. So unless I build some kind of frame, like a 2x4 frame around here with a long leg here, I think the only way that I'm gonna be able to like practically do this is just use an impact wrench. Okay, I'm gonna go back with the original plan, the one that everybody does. I'm gonna put this on the heat gun like this, and just to make it so it's a little bit easier to take off, I'll heat up the nut and shaft here, and then I'm going to use this to take it off. And it's reverse threaded, so we're going to use forward, not reverse. Okay, so I've got it set pretty much to its max. It says 1800 watts. So that's low, that's high. Yeah, and it's pretty hot. This is a lot safer than using a propane torch. Alright, let's try it. And it's coming off. Still pretty warm. So you can see that I didn't even bother trying to unstake it. It will just pretty much just unstake itself. So we're going to try to get it here back on the same mark when we put it back on. And it looks like the shaft on this one is just barely, let's see, it's just barely above the nut. So it's just barely poking up above the nut. Ah, that's hot. Okay, so it looks like this one was also just barely above the nut. The shaft is just barely above it. Okay, so you can see from the staking right here, there's one stake point on the nut, and that little cutout on the shaft, there's only one, there's not two. So we know two things: the shaft barely protrudes above the nut, and it's got a single point to go back onto. So that's how we're gonna torque it back down. I haven't tested this one, so I don't know which side of the gear this rag needs to be on. So since I know this one is reverse, I'm going to do this one first. Oh, that one came off really easy. So this is what happened to the rag. So it's taking some of the abuse. So that's probably a good thing. I'm hoping. So since this is gonna be counterclockwise to take it off, it's gonna spin this way. So I'm thinking that the rag's gotta be jammed in here, or probably through here to jam these, or probably through these two gears, right through. So since this gear has to spin this way to take this nut off, rag should be jammed through here, or it needs to be jammed through probably, see, it's spinning this way, so I believe you would have to jam it through these two gears, this gear and this gear. So through here, because if you try to put the rag up here, it's gonna try to spit it out. So actually I'll probably just jam it through here. Looks like the easiest way. So I just took a flathead and I just pushed the rag through the gear to jam it. And I'll just keep applying heat to this one because it seems to be working. Okay, so counterclockwise on this one, it's normal threaded. And this one seems to be pretty stuck in there. Or not. That wasn't too bad. It's off. Yeah, it looks like even though that socket's loose, these nuts aren't being hurt that much. I don't want to touch that one, that's so hot. But looks like just pieces of that rag. That's what the color is. And once I spin this out or get each of these shafts out, I'll be able to see if there's any damage on the teeth. Looks like the reason why this one binded a little bit is because of that piece of metal you see right there where it was staked. So I'll try to take that piece of metal out, and this one actually, even by hand right now trying to twist it back on, I'm having problems, and I think it's because of that right there. So I'll probably have to try to file that off or file it down somehow. Okay, so that really was just a chunk of metal that was there, and I took it off already. So on this one, I don't think the width is a problem, but it does have a raised edge. That might be, actually you can kind of see it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna grind it off with a reinforced cutoff wheel. So definitely wear eye protection for this. Wish it would spin the other way so it doesn't, so all these sparks don't fly in my eye. And that might be okay. I'll try it. Still getting caught a little bit. Might have helped a little bit, but I still feel resistance after a certain point. But I tried to push it down a little bit with the impact wrench, and it seems it's going through. I mean, it came out, so obviously it should go back in. I'm just gonna move on, so just make sure that we're using the same nuts back on them. I'm gonna take them off one at a time, and this is the first one that we're gonna take off. We're gonna take off this, and I think this is the third clutch drum. So, and I'm gonna be replacing all these bearings too. I'm not sure how this comes off. Maybe with a bearing splitter, kind of like the guillotine one that just cuts it and lifts it off. I might just try to heat it and maybe use 2 flatheads. I don't know. Actually, I probably will get the bearing splitter. But to get this off, we're gonna need a 2-jaw puller. So basically just clean this thing up and then grease up the part that you need. And just get it tightened up and then use the impact wrench. Make sure you use a 2-jaw puller, not the 3-jaw, because you probably won't be able to fit all 3 jaws on here. And if you look under, you can see what you're grabbing onto. And these nuts come loose often, so make sure that they're actually on. Okay, so that looks pretty even. That one's between both of those gears. So now just put your impact wrench on here with a socket, and then it should come off. Okay, so it's 18mm socket, just barely doesn't fit. Maybe you can find one that's loose enough to fit, but I'm gonna use an 18mm socket. And actually, it should be going down, so we should be going forward, not backwards. And that was really easy. That's what the top looks like. And looks like there's a bunch of needle bearings below it. That one and that one. Alright. I'm gonna try to be really careful. And I noticed that this is about to fall out. It's that washer right there, so just be careful with that. And that's what the inside looks like. And it looks like the teeth that I stuck the rag in, they might be okay. Okay, I cleaned up the oil and it looks like there's 2 O-rings here. That's just a spline. That's a needle bearing. That's a needle bearing. Oh, and that looks like they're gonna fall off if I try to take that off. So I'll do that later. So here's the washer. Just make sure you keep that. And it looks like a bunch of splines. So there's one, and there's another spline on the other side. So those splines must have matched up with those splines right there. Okay, so from what I can tell, that's where the rag was pushed up against it, and I can't see anything obvious that those teeth are damaged, bent, or anything. Same with here. I can't tell where the rag was pushed in at all, so I don't see any obvious bent teeth here either. For some reason, this transmission should have 144,000 miles on it. I don't even see any wear here. I don't know if this is black paint or what it is, but basically it looks brand new. So is the tooth on the parking pawl or whatever this is called. It basically still looks brand new. Okay, if you can see the washer that was on that gear, it's got an X, and that was pointed up. So this is the bottom side, and it looks like it's actually curved a little bit. So that's one way to tell. Okay, so if you can see, this ring right here goes all the way around, and it stops right there, actually. So I've already pushed it up a little bit, so just pull this up off of its groove and just work all the way around to pull this thing off. And I'll keep it like this so I know which side it came off of. I think the way to get this gear off, because we can't pull this off until we get this off, I think we just kind of just wiggle this off. Unless there's a snap ring in here. I'll go look it up, see how this comes off. Okay, so these two are not supposed to be stuck together. And so basically, you're just gonna have to slowly work this loose. And I'm trying to push back the clutch disc because I just want the gear out. Okay, this is the way I'm gonna try to do it. This is a 4-inch 2-jaw puller from Harbor Freight. And so I got 2 flatheads, lifted this up, put the first jaw in. Other one I had to be more careful, lifted this up, got another flat head, lifted the other side up, and just carefully did it without damaging anything. I got both jaws in. The top is touching the top of this gear, so that's as far as it'll go in. And same thing with that, it's touching the top of the gear, so that's as far as that will go in. I put a this is a 30-inch socket. Just try to center it as best you can. And this is a 15mm socket on a ratcheting breaker bar. So I'm going to keep trying to do that. And just make sure you don't hear or see anything that's out of the ordinary. Yep, and it looks like it's working. I don't even need it. I think the trick was just getting even pressure on both sides, because these things shouldn't be stuck together at all. Okay. Gonna try to be careful and make sure everything's in the right order. So if you get stuck, try to do that. I mean, I tried putting 2 flatheads on each side, but it was like a giant spring. It kept pushing back in, so that wasn't working. So use this and just use it really gently. So this gear came out. That's what it looks like inside. I'm not sure what it was getting caught on. Probably the bottom of this, because there's some scratch marks on it. Here's the socket that I had on. I was trying to center it on this thing. I wasn't sure what this was. So I'm going to do my best to try to keep this all in order, because I have no clue how this thing goes together. So needle bearing. And I'll stick it right there. This looks like a spacer or something. Might replace this part. Looks like it's got some wear on it. Okay. Not sure if that's anything at all. This looks like the top part of the clutch thing.